Is buying millions of artillery shells and rockets from North Korea for its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. That's according to a newly declassified U.S. intelligence report first published by the New York Times yesterday. U.S. government officials tell the paper that Russia's decision to turn to North Korea was a sign that sanctions and export controls imposed the U.S. and Europe were hurting Moscow's ability to obtain supplies for its army by the U.S. The disclosure comes days after Moscow received shipments of Iranian-made drones, which U.S. officials say had mechanical problems. U.S. intelligence officials believe that Russia could look to purchase additional military equipment from North Korea in the future. NBC News has not yet independently confirmed the Times reporting. Meanwhile, Russian forces have renewed intense shelling near Europe's largest nuclear plant. A fire forced the staff to sever the plant's last connection to a reserve line that was providing its only source of outside power. According to the reports, firefighting crews struggled to reach the site because of continued fighting around the plant. Nearby shelling and explosions are raising fears about a possible nuclear disaster looming. This comes as UN inspectors are expected to give a more formal report as soon as today on their efforts to avert a potential disaster. The new issue of The Atlantic is dedicated to the war in Ukraine, a special package devoted to life in the country and the state of the war. Joining us now, staff writer for The Atlantic, George Packer. He is one of the cover stories for the special issue entitled "Ukrainians Are Defending the Values Americans Claim to Hold." And here's part of what George writes, quote, "A whole society mobilized. This was my first and most lasting impression. The mayor of Lviv described Ukraine in crisis as a beehive. Nearly everyone I met had looked for something to do as soon as Russia attacked, some way to be useful without waiting for instructions from a higher authority. On the day the invasion started, a sculptor and a theatrical lighting designer went to volunteer at a local territorial defense post in Kyiv and were given instant training in the use of AK-47s. Neither had ever fired a gun in their lives. But within 24 hours, they were standing on a rooftop in the north of the capital, scouting the streets below for the first Russian tanks. Yet almost every Ukrainian I met shared it. We will win. And also, no compromise. I do not know what these men thought of American politics, and I didn't want to know. Back home, we might have argued, we might have detested each other. Here, we were joined by a common belief in what the Ukrainians were trying to do and admiration for how they were doing it.
And George, of course, as you note, this has united many Americans along partisan divides. There was a line that I thought was very striking when we asked what's going to happen here. You spoke actually to a former Green Beret from Texas on a train ride. And let me get the quote right. And he said to you, he said, in basic terms, slaves can never defeat free people. Once a man tastes the taste of freedom, he won't let anyone take it from him. Sounds like that nicely encapsulates your experience in Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what this man's politics were. We didn't talk about American politics, thank God. We talked about Ukraine and found that we had a similar experience of the Ukrainians and a similar admiration for them. And that kind of line might be something I would be skeptical about if I heard it, you know, at an American bar. Like, what do you mean? Free men, slaves? You talking about guns? What are you talking about? But in Ukraine, it meant something real, because it's the sort of place where most wars, the closer you get to them, I've found, the more complicated they get. And Ukraine was the opposite. The closer you got, the simpler it became. It really is a clear case. It is a simple matter of good and evil, as one woman said to me, or to be a little more sophisticated about it, of a democratic society trying to save itself and become a better democracy against a tyranny that's trying to destroy it. It's a war for survival as well as for democratic values. Once you see it that way, and it's impossible not to, you have to really be blind not to see that when you go there. Once you see that, there's no question which side you're on. And there's no questioning why Ukrainians keep talking about the need to keep fighting and not compromise with Putin.
So, George, we've watched in awe for the last 6 or 7 months now as the Ukrainian people have rallied, as you write about, in this beehive way to defend their country. And I think one of the first moments was that Snake Island moment where the Ukrainian soldiers are said to have given the finger and told the military of Russia to blank off and then was fired upon. Where do these Ukrainian people, from where do they summon this? I mean, is it out of desperation? Is it out of survival? Because as you write, to a man, it's not just members of the enlisted military, it's everybody in that society who has seemed to rally to do his or her part here.
I think it's been coming for years, and most Ukrainians I talked to pointed to 2014 as the key moment. Some of us think this war started in February. The war started 8 years ago, and even if it was at a lower level of intensity, it really did affect all of Ukraine. And it told Ukrainians that they really faced a choice between their own Russian-influenced politics, autocracy, corruption, and a democratic transformation that they were in the process of making when Putin began to subvert the country because it was democratizing. So I think Ukrainians have been seeing this coming for a long time and seeing sacrifice for a long time, the staggering destruction that in every town you see these fresh graves that have been dug for troops and some civilians, and it's heartbreaking to see the loss of life at that scale where every Ukrainian knows someone who's been killed. I think the more that goes on, and it is a strange thing, the more determined they become, partly because they know they face an existential fight. They will be destroyed as a country, as a people, if they lose. But partly, I think, because they'd already made a commitment, many Ukrainians at least, to a set of values that they are now fighting for. And so when it came under direct and massive attack in February, they were already prepared to defend it.
George, Elise Jordan here. You spent a long time reporting on the ground in Iraq and wrote a well-regarded book about the debacles of that war. How has your reporting in Iraq influenced the way you approach reporting in Ukraine, and what can policymakers learn about intervention given our experience in Iraq?
It's a great question. And Iraq is the war that got more complicated the more time I spent there, the classic case of that. And I think the biggest difference are the people that we are supporting, whether it's in a misbegotten effort to democratize a deeply divided country, Iraq, or I think a really important and crucial effort to arm a country fighting for its life, Ukraine. The key difference is, what do the people there want? What is our relation to them? Are we supporting something that they're fighting for, or are we trying to impose something that they are divided among themselves about? It cannot come from us. It comes from them. And I began to feel in Ukraine that if Ukrainians say we're willing to fight to the end, that's our obligation. It doesn't sound like very sophisticated foreign policy speak, but if Ukraine is willing to keep fighting, we have to keep supporting them because the stakes of their losing are so high, both in Ukraine and around Europe and the world.